Welcome to Wellness Radio with Dr. Jeanette-Gallagher as your host. Her show discusses topics of health, wellness, and spirituality, and is about discovering your place in this great universe, from your cells to the cosmos. Along with her guest, in casual conversation, she strives to ask the difficult questions that may be holding you back from a vibrant life, and shares new ideas that may inspire you to make a change in your life that you only can see in your dreams. And now, here is Dr. Jeanette-Gallagher.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Wellness Radio. This is Dr. Jeanette-Gallagher, and it's a pleasure to have you with us this evening. Tonight we are going to be talking about beings, extraterrestrials, humans, supernatural, what goes bump in the night, what shows up in the day, what can you touch and feel? Are we limited by our mind, our consciousness? Perhaps our exploration of the unknown seems to be coming up these days. We are in the year 2023, and really many people are starting to explore the concepts that there's something more out there. What is it all about? Well, I'm almost 70, and all of my early physics classes and chemistry classes have all taught me that there is something else out there. My religious experiences with ghosts and with angels has proven to a point that I can touch, feel, and sense. All of my out-of-body experiences are full on, and we'll share all of these stories today. What we're talking about is that the world around us, the universal energy, the experiences, all that we cannot hear, feel, or sense with these few senses that we have as a human, it's very limiting in a way, being a human, but they are all out there. And now we are starting to breach, ask questions, see if there's something else out there, joining our stories together and saying, whoa, it's not that much to fear. Let's take this journey all together, and banding together and asking the questions. Where will we go? What will we know? And what will we evolve into? Isn't that the name of the game? Today my guest is Richard Lewis. His book is The Paranormal Christian, More True Stories of the Strange and Unusual in the Christian Life. Richard, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Jeanette. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm so glad to have you talk about this topic today, because sometimes people will say, but the paranormal and religion, that really doesn't go together. I've even had people say, well, we don't talk about the afterlife. We don't talk about out-of-body. I need you to delete my show. I don't want to do that. But in essence, what you're really talking about is, how can we deny the cracks in our human stories that we've been holding on to, because they are starting to happen. We can't control them. Yes?
Oh, I couldn't agree more. You know, when you look at the universe, the physical, the spiritual, the supernatural, the paranormal, you know, what I've noticed is that there's a common picture, how it all correlates. And this energy, this source that we come from, in the Christian church we call it God. You know, there's something greater than us that's propagating everything that we do, that's propelling us. And I'm a lifelong Christian, and I believe that an interest and a curiosity about the paranormal, you know, paranormal simply means supernatural, and that is what is revealed through the scriptures, through the Bible, from cover to cover. It's basically a proof text for the supernatural or for the paranormal. I mean, they mean the same thing. And so I've always had this sense, this presence, ever since I was a little boy. And I talk about this in my first book, The Paranormal Christian, Book 1, where I was actually saved I was abducted as a child. And I was abducted not by aliens. I have to say that right away, because anybody that's into, you know, New Thought or the more the woo-woo side of things, the abduction could mean something else. But this was a case where I was walking to school, or actually walking from school. I was let off of the school bus, and I was on my way to my grandma's house, and a teenager caught me on the way crossing the railroad tracks. I was heading up Pine Street, about to cross East Market in Greensboro, North Carolina, where I grew up. And he said, "Hey, kid, wait up." And I kind of froze, and he came over and started talking to me. And pretty soon I learned that I was his captive, and I was really little at the time. Like I say, I was this happened when I was this is like first, second grade era, when I was doing this 2-mile trek every day to my grandma's. And but every time I tried to leave, he would grab me and wouldn't let me go. And I was just, like I say, a skinny little kid. He was an older teenager, like probably 16 or 17. And I tried to talk and de-escalate. Well, I didn't know what de-escalate meant then, but I just basically said, "Hey, I got to get to my granny's house," etc. And he'd be nice, and then when I would try to leave, he would be more mean. And a time or two, there was a car that would maybe slow down just to kind of look, and I'm sure maybe it looked a little suspicious, but then he would take my hands and act like he was dancing with me. And eventually he took me to meet his friend, and so we made our way down the railroad tracks. Like I say, I document all this in my first book, The Paranormal Christian, and it was a good little journey there, and we eventually came down the embankment to a dilapidated shack off the side there, and he took me into the shack, and he had a friend there, as an older person, and the two of them sort of interviewed me, I guess you might say, and they made me very uncomfortable. They asked questions about my family. They made me do some things that didn't feel quite right. Like I said, I didn't really understand what was going on, but I knew it wasn't good. And there was a point where they were going to tie me up, and the teenagers wanted to do it earlier, and the older man, when I struggled and screamed, and he calmed him down and said, "Just let's wait." But after a while, he said, "Okay, yeah, go ahead and tie him up now." And they set me down in this chair, and the two of them, the man was kind of behind, and the younger man had some nylon cord, and they set me down. They pulled my hands behind me. They were going to tie my hands somehow, tie me behind my back onto the chair there. And as the two of them were holding my hands and struggling with the rope to try to get everything set, there was a moment in time where my hands were released for just a split second, and I heard a voice as clear as day, like through the sky, through my, all around me, and this voice said, "Run now." And without questioning it, I immediately bolted out of that seat and made towards the door of the shack. There was a deadbolt there, so I had to pull the deadbolt, and it was like time just about stood still, and I could practically feel the younger man's breath on the hairs of my neck, as I was unloosening this bolt, and I burst through the door. And I got this energy in my body, I don't know where it came from, but I ran faster than I've ever remembered running in my life. I looked down and my legs were like a blur. And I don't know how I did it. I consider it a miracle. But basically, I left this kid in the dust, and he was yelling and screaming, "Hey, kid, wait up. Come back here. Come back," And at some point, I looked over my shoulder, and I saw him finally doubling over. And, I just ran up the embankment and ran full speed all the way down the railroad tracks, all the way back to Pine Street, and all the way across the 4-lane highway of East Market to my grandmother's waiting arms. So my grandma was out on the porch, and my aunt was also. They were both looking around, because by this time I was very late, and they were very concerned. But so they, as I recall, they made a call to the police department, and officers came out and took a report. I guess they checked and found the shack, but nobody was there. But anyway, I credit this voice for saving my life, and so to me, this is the voice of God. And people ask me sometimes, well, what was it? Was it the Holy Spirit? Was it your guardian angel? Was it Jesus? Some even say, well, was it your higher self? And my answer to that is it doesn't matter. It's all from God, and that voice has always been there. Even before this incident happened, I always had this. In the Bible we call it a still small voice, but it tells you things. And so my exploration of Christianity has always been about connecting to that other. And so when I started going to church as a little kid, I already knew who God was. It's kind of like, I don't know if you ever saw the movie Elf, as we're approaching the holiday season, but Elf has become like a new Christmas classic. Will Ferrell, it's really great. He's a human that was raised in the North Pole by elves, so he's an elf, but he's a human too. So he goes to New York City and is experiencing life as a human for the first time, but he gets a job at the department store, and so when Santa Claus is going to come, he's getting all excited, like, oh, I know him. So when I went to church and people started talking about God, that's how I was. I was like, oh, hey, I know him. I know who you're talking about. So the Christian revelation through the Judeo-Christian understanding and through the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, through Jesus and everything else, and the saints and the church, has all been, to me, it's a revelation of God revealing himself to us. This is who I am. This is what I'm about. But you see God revealing himself through the other traditions too, as well, through the whole planet, because God isn't limited by dogma. Dogma may limit us depending on what denomination or whatever you're in, the rules and things like that. But God's not bound by our rules, so He's going to speak to people. It doesn't matter where you're born. He's for all people, and the Bible even says that. It says that He'll reveal Himself to all, and we see this in Isaiah 40:5, Jeremiah 29:13, as well as 33:3, Matthew 11:27, Romans 1:20, 1 Corinthians 2:10, Philippians 2:10 through 11. All of these scriptures indicate that God reveals Himself to all people, and Jesus Christ is for all people. And that's what the Bible teaches us. It's not about exclusion. It's not about being a part of a club or a clique. God is for everyone.
So in essence, don't you think that really, Richard, what has happened is that we've really been in a confined kind of human construct, because pretty much we're using and basing everything upon our past knowing, our past dogma. But if you look back on eons, there were a lot of philosophers that knew a heck of a lot more than we do today. How about all of that built all the pyramids, or that knew about enlightenment, or all of these other very esoteric kind of things as we classify it. But yet, we look at the cowboys and Indians, they couldn't put one and one together. Do you know what I mean? They were doing something else to be able to find their connection to the universal force, so to speak. So if you look at each, I would say, each eon, kind of speak, over timelines, everybody was constructually trying to know who they were in the place they were in, and then they wanted to know something more. And that's where their knowing branched out. So in essence, been very stuck in this human dogma. I mean, we've been trying to fix the body for the last maybe 100 years. First it was antibiotics, after the war. Then it was, let's get braces and straighten up your teeth. Then we're going to turn around and do plastic surgery because we'll make you a perfect being. So we've been trying to have the construct of the body. We've been stuck in this body, and we've been really mesmerized by it for this lifetime, many of us. And now we're coming to the point where after the pandemic, where all of a sudden people's bodies were, we're going to take them away. They're gone. Now what?
Well, the physical body is definitely it's how we move about through this physical experience. So it's hard not to be distracted by it. It's actually amazing and miraculous that it works as well as it does. That especially when it's functioning properly. But the body requires energy, and it has cravings, and there can be unhealthy things that develop, and so forth and so on. But the Bible teaches us that we're spirit, soul, and body, and even the church hasn't really defined this very clearly. But I have come to an understanding about this, which I talk about in my Paranormal Christian book series. But if you look at that concept, spirit, soul, and body, the spirit is that which animates the body, and when the body is animated by spirit, there you have soul, or as some people say, mind. But it's not the brain, because the brain is just an organ like the heart or the lungs or anything else, which also has a form of consciousness. However, at some point that spirit separates off, and if it, you mentioned having out-of-body experiences, we've also seen this with near-death experiences, which I think it all correlates, though, because the common thing that we see upon all these things, when you mentioned the cowboys and Indians, well, the Indians, if you look at, they have the many traditions where they acknowledge the Great Spirit. So to me, this is all correlating to the same source, to the same God. So, like on the X-Files, they used to say the truth is out there. I think it really is, because where does the music come from? It comes from the muses, right? So as an artist and as a writer, I've noticed I can't take credit for my work because it's always being informed by something greater than myself. And this is something that all the great thinkers, all the great scientists, all the great doctors have all known, that the answers are there. It's just you have to be open to receiving them.
But in essence, we're still using the answers. In other words, information is coming to us, but we're still using the words, the alphabet. We're still using a definition or a defined aspect. I've always said this on the show for over a decade now, is that which the time we are going to will not have the words. In other words, we're taking nothing from this existence with us. Absolutely nothing. We're not even taking the alphabet with us. We're going to be shedding and leaving everything behind. And that's when you have true quantum energy. If you look at it,
that's very interesting.
You really pipeline everything down to that quantum energy. Hey, you're good to go. And in essence, is not the time in which we are in, and you write about in your book too, is the time we are in is we've been in this black hole, and we're trying to exit the porthole, but we're trying to bring our stuff with us. And exiting the porthole will mean you take nothing with you.
Well, and that actually mirrors what the scriptures teach us, which is what happens in this life. You definitely riches, wealth, all those kind of things you definitely can't take with you, and those are the things that so many people are preoccupied by. But the subtitle for my new book, the Paranormal Christian book 2, is called The Quickening, because that's what I see is happening, and not like this premillennial type of view that a lot of Christians have, where there's this rapture that's coming, where there's going to be this dramatic thing where planes are crashing and buses are flipping because people are being snatched out of their soul, out of their bodies, and that's not what it means. I mean, we believe that there will be a culmination, there will be an end. That is what the Bible teaches, but it's also about new beginnings, because Einstein proved this, that energy can never be created or destroyed. So that which animates us, that essence that is us, must continue. And this is why any type of spiritual communication I've had, after death communications even, it happens telepathically, and there is a language because it is, I guess, imprinting upon perhaps the language that I know, which, like you say, we use alphabet. These are symbols for thoughts, for feelings. But that's what I think, is that it's a telepathic communication. But who's to say there aren't other languages in heaven, and who knows what the languages of the angels are? I mean, but it's very interesting.
Yeah. Let's take a break for a moment, and we will be right back.
Today we discuss many life-changing concepts. Who do you turn to, and how do you know what is best when faced with a health crisis? Dr. Jeanette is a patient advocate. She listens to the patient, the doctors, and the family, clarifies the health issues and concerns, then helps the patient make the best choices going forward. If you would like help implementing change into your life and health, we can talk and see where you are stuck and how to improve the quality of your life. Check the link on the bottom of today's show page, or visit dr.jeanette-gallagher.com to schedule a phone appointment today.
But you also look at it, too, when you talk about telepathy and stuff, that is the exiting of the black hole. And then you're there just being able to see each other as energy force. You know, we talk about, you talk about ghosts in your book, you know, I've seen them my entire life. I've seen angels my entire life. It's just always been that way. But it wasn't about asking questions or sensing or see them, and then turn around and say, "Oh, let me get a piece of paper and I'll draw it for you." A lot of times it was a knowing or something different. Like when I was little and the angel came because I was hungry, all I remember was a hand with radishes and there was light. I don't remember anything else. It's not something that I'm going to sit down and define. Or when I see the ghosts, oh yeah, I mean, my husband will say to me, Jeanette, are you in the bathroom? I'll say, no, I'm sleeping. He says, oh, I just saw another ghost walk through the bathroom. And that's common. I mean, I live in New Orleans. That's the way it is. And, you know, I mean, we're very open to this. So it's not something that we have that fear of. I think truly, Richard, what we're talking about, too, is how can we assess our fear? How can we open and evolve through our consciousness to be able to be prepared for what is going to be our next evolution? That's really what you and I are talking about.
Well, and you know, in the Bible it says, "I did not give you a spirit of fear," you know, and so that's. But we do find that we are sometimes afraid of the dark and things. You know, when I've talked to people, they describe angels as beings of light, people in the near-death experience, and so forth and so on. Ghosts, you see these various different manifestations. But I think it really comes down to the fact that we don't have the hardware to download the software. You know what I mean? So when you're in that other, and it's like, you know, the Apostle Paul talks about an experience going to the third heaven, and it sounds a lot like an out-of-body experience to me. Right. And he says that he saw wondrous things that he can't even describe. And it's kind of, I thought about that when you mentioned that you can't really sketch it or draw it out. It's a feeling and impression, but it's like if you try to take a video game today and download it to an Atari 2600, it's not going to play. So you experience it, you maybe you have the dream time travels or whatever else, but then you come back to the containment of the physical body, and there's a shadow, a mirror of that experience, but you can't really fully appreciate it or describe it.
Because it's of a different frequency. You know, I mean, I have said, we talk about dimensions a lot. You know, you'll hear that in the spiritual community. Are we in the third or the fourth dimension, you know, when angels are of the ninth or the whatever? And, you know, it came out of my mouth when I started doing this show over 11 years ago. I said, I'm in the 23rd dimension. I don't know where y'all are. Just need to hurry up. Because everybody's pretty much in this basic third dimension, you know, in other words, touch, feel kind of thing, you know, with human, you know, all of their stories and everything, and they're kind of locked down. But in essence, when you think about it, really, truly what you're saying, too, and we talk about out of body, we talk about near death, that's when the frequency starts to shift. It's like, if you remember, I'm not sure if you're old enough or not, but we used to have a radio in the car, and we only had AM, and you could start to tell when you drove a little farther, it started to drift in and out. And you might pick up a different frequency or a different radio station or a different song, or all of a sudden it'd just be static. That's the difference. So what we are truly saying is we're trying to make sense of all these experiences in the other realm as we bring them back into our stories or whatever. But we're still using the same old stuff of our old frequency. So in essence, when we just banish all of that, that's when the freedom really comes about, to say, you know, hey, I'm open to whatever shows up. And then what happens? You start to meditate, things start to happen to you, you start to feel things, sense things, you hear things, and you have a knowing, and all of a sudden you say, wow, there's so much more to me. And that's where we're going, right?
Well, and I would say that's true. And when it comes to tuning the frequency, you're going to pick up the signal that you tune to. So if you're tuning down towards the lower vibration type of experiences, which is honestly where so many of the people on the planet are operating at. I mean, if you're if you live in a place where there's food insecurity and things like that, and there's the physical safety issues, most people aren't thinking too much about other things. But however, the more you raise your vibration, so to speak, the more you tune to the higher source, the more you'll find that you'll receive those resources. You'll find that protection, that safety. You'll find the guardian angels that the Bible tells us that we have. You'll see that God is providing and taking care of you the more you tune yourself towards the light rather than the darkness.
Right. You know, it's also interesting, too, as we ascend to a different dimension of time or a different timeline, so to speak, sometimes people will say, but we will leave the evil. We'll leave the evil behind. The evil is lower frequency. When in essence, it's the paradigm that we're on, the frequency we are as humans today, has a left to right kind of paradigm where you could have the good on one side, you can have the evil on the other. So when we ascend to the next dimension, are we to believe that there is not also evil, good, and bad within that left to right? You know, sometimes people think that when we go up, we consistently are being all good. And that may or may not be true. Sometimes when we think about ETs, right? We are, you know, and ET is anything other than human. So let's just clear that up right now. It's anything other than human. So if we think about ETs, we say, are they all good or are they all bad? But in essence, is not God also an ET? Is not God also something out there? Aren't they all just the collection of the other frequencies?
Well, you know, anything that comes from source that from which we propagate from, since we are created, anything from that which preexisted this creation would be extraterrestrial. I mean, and in the basic term, anything outside of planet Earth, I think probably a lot of the ghosts are earthbound spirits, and so in a sense they're terrestrial, but they're also extraterrestrial, and they come from the spirit realm. And I think there are levels to that existence. And you know, evil is real. You know, a lot of people in our in this sort of study, they don't acknowledge the existence of evil spirits, and I think there's a spectrum of what you'll experience outside of that. And I don't necessarily think that when we leave our physical bodies that we completely shed all of our ego self instantly either. So I mean, perhaps this concept of yin yang in the Eastern philosophies, maybe there's something to that, you know. But I believe that there's redemption for all beings if through Jesus Christ, and that's what I've experienced and seen. But what I call Jesus as God, is Creator, as Source, which that is all encompassing. So the other spiritual practices, I feel, are reaching also towards that source. That's the same source, I believe.
In essence, when we talk about the word evil, is not the word evil a construct of human dogma, belief, and a fear-mongrel thing to keep control, to keep us separate, to create bias? Because when in essence, if you look at it, I understand many religions, you know, I'm a Catholic, that they have, you know, heaven and hell and all that. But in essence, is it not that you can see someone that's performed a crime and you can help and you can feel their essence of them. You can feel their heart, their unconditional love inside. I think that's where the real true key is. So are we saying that everyone has unconditional God light source in them, but when a human vehicle is tapped on the top of it, then they're out there performing an exercise or an experience in the world in which we live in for the purpose of finding unconditional love in each other and everyone?
Yes, that's very interesting. I mean, what you are saying is exactly what the church teaches, which a lot of Christians don't understand this, but it's that we're simultaneously saint and sinner, and no one is truly reprobate in terms of you are that being of love. You just have to tap into it and tap into that, because you can become distracted. When you look at people, especially, again, what we label as evil, we're commanded to love one another. That's what Christianity teaches us. And what is love but to wish good upon the other? So evil is real in the sense that you can do harm to someone, but the Bible teaches us that no sin is unforgivable except for the sin of rejecting God. So God offers that forgiveness for everyone. And I think probably a lot of the harm that we do, a lot of the mistakes that we make, the Bible says that everything works out to good to them that love the Lord. So perhaps some of these things are constructs or agreements even of ways that we learn and ways that our soul grows and evolves through the mistakes that we make. Even the harm that we do at times can be a gift.
Right, because are they not for us to see that they are merely human experiences? I've written in the front of your book, again, the book is The Paranormal Christian. I was reading the prologue, and right at the bottom of the page, you said, help me to love more. And I wrote, change the concept of what love is. I think that is primal to humans. They're stuck in this story of what love is, what it isn't, how they can get it, how they lack of it, when in essence they have never fully touched the word unconditional love. And unconditional love is source energy. Unconditional love is God light source energy, period. You can dice it up a million times however you want to dice it up, but until we come to that unconditional love of source energy, well, all we're doing is spinning around like tops on, like black holes around in the universe, still stuck in our own stories, right?
Well, and this is exactly what Jesus taught us some 2,000 years ago when he said, and this was revolutionary at the time, when he said, love your enemies, because it's very easy to love your friends, but how do you love wishing good upon others and in an unconditional way? It's not natural for humans to do that, especially not with an enemy. So yeah, I feel that this is the truth that we're waking up to, and I feel it's revealed through Christianity with a proper understanding.
But are you loving their human story that's presenting, or are you loving the source inside of them? That's two totally different things.
I see what you mean. Well, I think you have to love them totally, body, soul, and spirit. That would be the true definition of love, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it truly makes a big difference, because I think sometimes when we can shed a lot of the story around things, you can just, I work a lot with end-of-life patients, and really they come to that point, and many are afraid to go to God because of what they've done or didn't do. Many are afraid because they have the unknown. A lot of times they try to spew all their stuff to the people that they're leaving behind. Oh, let me tell you a story. This is stuff I've been holding on to, blah, blah, blah. Many try to hold on to their earthly goods because they believe that they will be afraid and they won't be able to exit or whatever this world. When in essence, if we could just sit in one moment and meditate into a space and time and feel freedom for 1/2 second of an entire lifetime, then we're getting the glimpse of what that will be when we just shed this body and go to the next or the next or the next. And I think that's really important to understand, because then we don't have that fear, just as you talk about out of body, just as you talk about end of life, just as you talk about near-death experiences, or death. When we come to that point, if we could start stringing those pearls of that split second together, that's the life we want to create and share with others.
Well, and I think I've been with people at end of life and spent some time. I've also experienced after death communications from people, and Well, for one thing, every person that I've encountered on the that's after death. I mean, it's not that this is something that happens all the time. These were generally with people who were very close to me, and this is actually a common human experience. The church doesn't always acknowledge this, but it doesn't say it can't happen either. And we believe that there is a provision that it can, if you really look at it. And it's just too common of an experience to ignore. But they're okay. You know, the people that I've communicated with, and but it's not that the body is bad. I mean, we don't come into this earthly experience because it's bad. I mean, we experience both all kinds of spectrum of experiences in the body, but the body isn't evil. This is something that, you know, going back to the ancient Greek teachings, that there was a thought that the body itself was evil, and I don't believe that. And many of us believe in reincarnation, where we come back to experience new things. Most Christians don't. I don't think it contradicts the teachings of the church, but at some point, the Bible teaches that we will, receive a glorified body, and it talks about new heavens and new earth and things like that. But when you're outside of the body, you still experience things in an interesting way. You still see things. You still hear things somehow. And so it's mysterious, because, you know, you're not in a body, but yet you're still perceiving things as if you were in a way. So sometimes, I mean, like if you're dreaming, you know, somebody touches you in a dream, you feel that touch, you can see things and everything, but really it's not your body. It's like in the Matrix, whenever Morpheus says to Neo, "Is that air you're breathing right now?" You know, so it's very interesting, and even some of the near-death experiences where not breathing is more natural than breathing. We want to shed that fear, because it is the state that we will have to entertain at some point, and if anything, maybe it's even better than this.
Yeah, you know, I always talk about, I say awesome, you know, when someone says, you know, we're reaching that time, you know, at the end of life or death, and I'll say, awesome. Let's join together and see what kind of exit would you like. I've had patients who would come back from the hospital at 3 a.m. and have a birthday party with cakes and party things and music and all kinds of lights and Christmas trees and everything. And they were just going to celebrate the life that they're leaving. And that was awesome to them. And it wasn't scary, and it wasn't frightful, and the people they left behind weren't weren't filled with remorse and everything. They celebrated that part of the person.
Yes.
You know, and
well, the losses for us here on this side, you know, those of us in the physical, we miss our departed loved ones, but you know, the Christian scriptures teach us that a day is like 1,000 to the Lord, and 1,000 like a day. So to those loved ones who are basically waiting on us, or we're waiting on them, we're the ones that are watching the clock. For them, you know, the source is outside of time and space. But it's not a thing to dread. You know, when my mother passed away, I talk about this in the Paranormal Christian Book 2. In Chapter 6, I talk about after-death communications, and in the interlude before that, I talk about experiences with my mom. And she's visited me several times since she passed away, but the immediate visitation, which came a few hours after she passed away, she came to me and told me that I'm free, is what she told me. And for her, I mean, she died from cancer, so she was very sick and in a lot of pain, a lot of suffering. So for her, it was glorious. I mean, and I sensed her spirit when it left the body. She died, literally died in my arms, and it was like a phoenix. It was like an explosion. It wasn't a calm, you know, slow thing. It was a bursting forth, like a new birth, basically.
Yes.
As her spirit burst forth out of her body.
Yeah, that is so common. And, you know, so many times, too, people will say that your loved one might be at that time of death, and they start talking in tongues, or they start speaking to someone who's not in the room or whatever, and I'll say, oh, awesome. And it's like, oh, tell me who's here. What's going on, you know? And it's like to feel excitement to walk with those in their transition time is such a glorious place to be able to be when you can understand that it is something that is so monumental in our life. It is something so profound, and you can't even give it words. We're back to the same where we started in the beginning, Richard. There are no words for this because it's just something you just have to sense and feel. And I want to go back for a second. Mm-hmm. When you talked about out of body, and it's so funny because, my husband would say to me, my gosh, you snored so loud last night. What was up? And I'll say, and here's what it is. I said, oh, my gosh, I don't know where I was, but there was this really cool thing I was checking out and I was doing in my sleep. And I use snoring when I exit my body. I leave my body in the snore mode so I know where to come back. It's my
Wow, that's a very interesting thought.
Yeah, it's my lighthouse. And I know it distinctly because I could feel myself get sucked back in. There's a very loud noise in my ears. And when I'm getting sucked through this, and then I go towards the sound of the snoring. And I know it distinctly because there's nights that I don't snore at all, and I really didn't go in or out at that time. And I've correlated this, I'm almost 70 over all these decades. And it is such an exquisite journey when you're able to piece the pieces of your experience of how you're evolving together. Isn't that what you share in your book is about? These are the pieces of my life. These are my stories. And to be able to say, isn't it awesome, right?
Well, yes, and you look at my stories and what I found in my research and interviewing people and taking the case studies, the famous as well as the lesser known, and then the ones I've discovered myself, is that they're all they're personal stories, but these little collections, if you look at it, the aggregate of examining them across people and across time is they're all the same. We're telling the same stories, so that weight of testimony is huge. And these journeys on the other side, are kind of a precursor to eventually. I know in the Bible it talks about when the silver cord is broken. At some point, you don't go back to the body again, and then you go on to the next thing. But I guess it's good to know that we can give comfort to all the people with snoring out there, knowing that that's the little beacons to bring them back to their body. And hey, even have you ever experienced where you a lot of people experience this where they're startled awake when they're falling asleep. They wake up and they kind of wake up startled like they're falling. Mm-hmm. And I believe that this is because the spirit is dropping into the body, and sometimes we're startled awake from that.
Right, and sometimes it's grabbing you back. Many times, many near-death times, I've had so many surgeries in my lifetime, can't even count, and many times I can distinctly remember, are you going to go back, Jeanette? And it was like, I really don't want to. I really don't want to go back, And, even when my son, he tried to commit suicide 13 times, and I would go into a trance when he was in that time, and he and I would be together within this space. And I had it set up so that we would be sitting at this little cafe kind of table and talking and saying, well, what do you want to do? You're going to go back? Well, what's it about? Where's it going? All this kind of stuff. And we would have a conversation, and it would switch the energy because he's totally stopped doing it now. And I think those are so vitally important for people to say. If you're having something strange going on in your world, sit down and write it on a piece of paper, set it to the side, and keep writing them down as they show up. Give something, some body, some words, something to it. Or if you're an artist, sit down and take out some paints and draw it forth in your creative self. Once you start doing that, then you feel, this is okay. Isn't that we want to give our conversation today will end on that, is that we want people to know whatever you're feeling, sensing, seeing, or knowing, it's okay.
You are loved. Everyone listening to this, I want you to know that you are loved, and it's natural to have emotions, and depression has become so common these days with the pandemic. Really put a damper on the planet, and especially our young people that were in school during these times have really struggled. But like you said, art, journaling, these outlets. You have to have that for the physical body, for the emotions, the pent up, the chemicals, all those things. But ultimately, you're loved, and God loves you. So I want you to feel comforted by that.
Right, and go back to the other thing. The most important word is unconditional love. To know that love, on the words of a human, doesn't mean what you look like, what you feel like, what you did, what you didn't do. It has nothing to do with it. Everyone has unconditional love in their soul. It's given that way. That's the way it came in. That's the way it's going out. And, if we can see that, feel that, and sense that, and know that, all of this other stuff is, I call schmutz on the table, right?
That's very interesting. I've never heard it put quite that way before.
That's all
Dr.
it is.
Jeanette.
And if
Yes,
we look
ma'am.
at it, isn't it, right? Well, Richard, it was such a pleasure to have you with us. Can you share with the listeners how to find out more information about your work? That'd be great.
Oh, yes, Dr. Jeanette, I would be happy to. So you can connect with me on richarddlewisauthor.com. Again, that's richarddlewisauthor.com. My books are widely available on Amazon and barnesandnoble.com. Any place where you can order books, you'll find my book series there. All my social medias are linked up on my website. I'm very active on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Please reach out, and I answer emails. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Very good. Well, Richard, it was a pleasure to have you with us here today to do, as I call it, a dance in the ethers, because there's so much more than just this existence, right?
Yes, ma'am, exactly. So thanks. The pleasure was all mine.
Thank you so much. If you'd like to find out more information about Richard Lewis, please do click on the link on the bottom of today's show page to go directly to his website for more information on all of his books. The book we talked about today is The Paranormal Christian. Please do check it out and really hold your fear. Hold it in one hand and write down words with the other, because it really is going to be okay. And that's what we wanted to instill today, is that there's hope, there's inspiration, there's passion for life, no matter what, because unconditional love is the driver. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is Dr. Jeanette-Gallagher. Until tomorrow, have a great day.
Today we discussed many life-changing concepts. Who do you turn to, and how do you know what is best when faced with a health crisis? Dr. Jeanette is a patient advocate. She listens to the patient, the doctors, and the family, clarifies the health issues and concerns, then helps the patient make the best choices going forward. If you would like help implementing change into your life and health, we can talk and see where you are stuck and how to improve the quality of your life. Check the link on the bottom of today's show page or visit dr.jeanette-gallagher.com to schedule a phone appointment today.